There is a moment that almost every parent of twins experiences, but very few people talk about openly. It is the moment when you look in the mirror after months, or even years, of giving everything to two tiny lives at once, and suddenly wonder who you used to be before the constant noise, before the exhaustion, before love became so overwhelming that it erased every boundary between your children and yourself. Twins do not simply change your schedule, your sleep, or your responsibilities. They transform your identity in ways that are emotional, invisible, and deeply personal. Somewhere between midnight feedings, synchronized cries, and endless sacrifices, many parents discover that the person they once knew has quietly disappeared, but hidden inside that loss is also the possibility of becoming someone stronger, wiser, and more emotionally awake than ever before. Becoming a parent changes every human being, but becoming the parent of twins creates a transformation so intense that it often feels impossible to explain to people who have never lived through it. The emotional weight is doubled, the responsibility feels endless, and the struggle to hold on to your individuality can become one of the most difficult battles of your entire life. In today's video, we are going to explore the emotional and psychological impact twins can have on your personal identity, your relationships, your dreams, and the way you see yourself as a human being. This is not just a conversation about parenting, it is a reflection about sacrifice, transformation, emotional survival, and rediscovering who you are after your entire world changes overnight. If this story resonates with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like and share your own experience in the comments below, because your journey may help someone else feel less alone. The arrival of twins often feels less like a life event and more like an emotional earthquake that shakes every part of a person's existence at the same time. Before becoming parents, many people carry a strong sense of personal identity connected to their ambitions, routines, relationships, hobbies, and future dreams. There is usually a version of themselves they understand clearly, a rhythm to their life that feels familiar and manageable. Then suddenly, in one single moment, everything changes. The discovery of twins introduces not only excitement but also fear, uncertainty, and an awareness that life will never return to what it once was. The emotional intensity begins long before the babies are born because parents quickly realize that they are preparing for something far beyond ordinary exhaustion. The idea of raising two children simultaneously creates a constant pressure that slowly begins reshaping the way they think about themselves. The identity they spent years building starts blending into a new role that demands complete emotional surrender. What makes this transformation especially difficult is that society often romanticizes the experience, focusing only on the beauty of twins while ignoring the emotional identity crisis that many parents silently endure every single day. During the first months after twins are born, the concept of individuality can begin disappearing almost immediately. Days become repetitive cycles of feeding, cleaning, carrying, calming, and surviving with very little space left for personal reflection or emotional recovery. Sleep deprivation alone has the power to alter memory, emotional balance, patience, and self-perception. But when combined with the non-stop needs of two infants, it can create the feeling that personal identity has completely dissolved. Many parents stop recognizing themselves emotionally because every decision revolves around the survival and well-being of their children. Their hobbies vanish, their social lives disappear, and even simple moments of silence become rare luxuries. The emotional exhaustion becomes so intense that they no longer ask themselves what they want or how they feel because there is simply no time left to explore those questions. What once made them feel unique slowly becomes buried beneath responsibility. The most painful part is that this process often happens invisibly. Friends and relatives may praise the parents for their strength without realizing that inside, many of them feel emotionally disconnected from the person they used to be before parenthood completely consumed their existence. One of the deepest emotional struggles parents of twins experience is the sensation of becoming emotionally fragmented. Caring for two children at once means constantly dividing attention, energy, patience, and affection between two equally demanding human beings. This creates a psychological tension that rarely exists with a single child because every decision carries the fear of imbalance. Parents often feel guilty no matter what they do because giving attention to one child automatically means temporarily taking attention away from the other. Over time, this emotional splitting can also affect how they view themselves internally. They begin feeling like multiple versions of themselves existing simultaneously, each one trying to satisfy impossible expectations. One part of them wants to be endlessly patient and nurturing, another part longs for freedom and silence, while another struggles with resentment toward the loss of independence. These conflicting emotions can create shame because society frequently portrays parenthood as a state of constant fulfillment. In reality, many parents of twins secretly grieve the disappearance of the individual identity they once protected so carefully. They love their children deeply, yet they also mourn the parts of themselves that vanished along the way without warning. Relationships between partners often undergo profound transformations after twins enter the picture. The emotional connection that once defined the relationship can become overshadowed by exhaustion, logistical survival, and endless responsibilities. Conversations that once revolved around dreams, emotions, intimacy, and future plans are suddenly replaced by schedules, feeding times, medical appointments, and financial stress. Many couples begin feeling less like romantic partners and more like co-workers trapped inside an endless cycle of caregiving duties. This shift can quietly damage personal identity because relationships often serve as mirrors through which individuals understand themselves emotionally. When intimacy fades and emotional connection weakens, people may begin feeling invisible even inside their own home. The emotional isolation becomes even more painful because both partners are usually suffering simultaneously while lacking the energy to communicate openly about it. Instead of feeling understood, they often feel trapped inside survival mode. Over time, some individuals begin questioning whether the person they were before parenthood still exists beneath the exhaustion. The challenge becomes not only maintaining the relationship but also rediscovering themselves as emotional beings rather than simply functioning caregivers trying to make it through another overwhelming day. The outside world also changes the way parents of twins are perceived, which further influences personal identity in subtle but powerful ways. People often stop seeing them as individuals and begin defining them entirely through their children. Conversations revolve around parenting struggles, survival stories, and the fascination strangers have with twins. Their personal accomplishments, passions, and individuality gradually disappear from public perception. They are no longer recognized primarily as artists, professionals, dreamers, travelers, or independent personalities. Instead, they become the parents of twins. While this label may seem harmless, repeating it constantly can slowly reshape how individuals see themselves internally. Human identity is deeply connected to how others respond to us socially, and when society narrows a person's identity into a single role, it can create emotional suffocation. Many parents begin feeling guilty for wanting recognition beyond parenthood because cultural expectations often pressure them to sacrifice every personal desire without complaint. This emotional conflict creates a dangerous cycle where people suppress their individuality in order to appear grateful and selfless, even when internally they feel desperate to reconnect with the person they once were before their identity became entirely absorbed by the demands of family life. Social isolation becomes another powerful force that reshapes identity after twins are born. Maintaining friendships, attending social events, or participating in activities outside the home becomes dramatically more complicated. The logistics alone can feel overwhelming, and many parents eventually stop trying altogether because the emotional and physical effort required simply feels impossible. As social circles shrink, opportunities for emotional expression and personal validation outside the family disappear as well. Friendships often provide reminders of who people are beyond their responsibilities. But when those relationships fade, individuals can lose access to important parts of their identity. Many parents of twins describe feeling disconnected from the outside world, as though life continues moving forward for everyone else while they remain trapped inside an endless cycle of caregiving. This isolation can intensify feelings of invisibility and emotional loneliness. Even when surrounded by family every moment of the day, people may still feel profoundly alone internally because they no longer have spaces where their personal thoughts, dreams, fears, and individuality can exist freely. Over time, this emotional confinement changes not only behavior but also the fundamental way people understand themselves emotionally and psychologically. Career identity is another area deeply affected by the experience of raising twins. Before parenthood, many individuals define themselves partially through their professional ambitions, achievements, creativity, and independence. Work often provides structure, recognition, purpose, and a sense of progression. However, after twins arrive, career goals frequently become secondary to survival and caregiving. Some parents reduce work hours, abandon professional opportunities, or leave careers entirely because managing both family and work responsibilities becomes emotionally unbearable. This sacrifice can create a profound identity crisis, especially for people whose self-worth was strongly connected to professional accomplishment. They may begin questioning their value outside of parenting because the world no longer recognizes the talents and ambitions that once shaped their sense of self. At the same time, guilt often prevents them from openly discussing these feelings because society expects parents to prioritize children above all else without hesitation. The emotional conflict becomes deeply painful because loving one's children does not erase the grief associated with losing personal dreams. Many parents silently struggle with the fear that the life they once imagined for themselves may never fully return, leaving them uncertain about who they are becoming emotionally. The emotional pressure of comparison also becomes more intense when raising twins because parents constantly feel observed and judged by others. People naturally compare twins to each other, but they also compare the parents themselves to unrealistic standards presented online and in society. Social media intensifies this pressure by showcasing idealized images of organized homes, smiling families, and parents who appear endlessly patient and emotionally fulfilled. For exhausted parents, struggling simply to survive each day, these images can create deep feelings of inadequacy. Many begin believing they are failing because they cannot maintain the illusion of perfection while simultaneously caring for two children with constant needs. This pressure damages identity because self-worth becomes tied to impossible expectations rather than authentic emotional reality. Parents may hide their struggles out of shame, pretending everything is under control even while internally collapsing under stress. Over time, performing this false version of themselves becomes emotionally exhausting. They stop expressing vulnerability, suppress their emotional truth, and gradually lose connection with their authentic identity. The fear of judgment becomes so powerful that many people feel trapped inside a role they no longer recognize, unable to admit how profoundly overwhelmed they truly feel. Another invisible struggle emerges from the constant mental overload that twins create inside daily life. Every hour involves countless decisions, responsibilities, and emotional calculations that rarely stop long enough for the mind to rest. Parents must remember schedules, manage emotions, anticipate needs, solve problems, and maintain constant awareness of two children simultaneously. This ongoing mental pressure often leaves little room for introspection or personal emotional processing. Over time, individuals may begin functioning almost automatically, moving through responsibilities without fully feeling connected to themselves internally. The person they once were becomes distant because survival consumes all available emotional energy. Many parents describe this experience as existing in a permanent fog where days blur together and time passes without meaningful personal reflection. This mental state can create emotional numbness, making it difficult to reconnect with passions, desires, creativity, or joy outside parenthood. Identity gradually shifts from being internally guided to being entirely reactive to external demands. The danger of this transformation is that people can spend years functioning for others while forgetting how to emotionally exist for themselves. When that realization finally arrives, it often carries an overwhelming mixture of grief, confusion, and emotional emptiness. Despite these struggles, something remarkable also begins happening beneath the exhaustion and emotional chaos. Many parents slowly develop emotional strengths they never knew existed within them. The experience of raising twins forces people to confront limits, fears, insecurities, and emotional vulnerabilities in ways few life experiences can replicate. They learn resilience not through inspiration but through necessity. They discover patience inside moments where they believed patience no longer existed. They develop emotional endurance while surviving nights that seem impossible. Most importantly, they begin understanding that identity is not fixed but constantly evolving through experience. Although parts of their former selves may disappear, new dimensions of personality and emotional depth begin emerging in their place. Compassion becomes deeper, empathy becomes stronger, and emotional awareness expands dramatically. Many parents eventually realize that the identity they lost was not destroyed completely, but transformed into something more complex and emotionally layered. This realization does not erase the grief associated with sacrifice, but it introduces a new understanding of personal growth. The person emerging from the experience is not necessarily weaker because of the loss. In many ways, they become emotionally stronger than they ever imagined possible. As twins grow older and independence slowly increases, many parents face another unexpected emotional challenge: rediscovering themselves outside constant caregiving. After years of dedicating every moment to their children, silence can feel unfamiliar and even frightening. Suddenly, there is space again for personal reflection, hobbies, relationships, and dreams. But reconnecting with those parts of identity is often more difficult than expected. Many people realize they no longer know what genuinely brings them joy outside parenthood because so much of their emotional life revolves around caring for others. This period can create both excitement and sadness simultaneously. There is relief in reclaiming personal freedom, but also grief over how much time and individuality disappeared along the way. Some parents experience guilt when pursuing personal happiness again because they became conditioned to place themselves last for so many years. Rebuilding identity after such an intense chapter requires emotional courage because it involves rediscovering desires, ambitions, and emotional needs that were suppressed for a long time. The process is rarely immediate. It unfolds slowly through small moments where individuals begin recognizing pieces of themselves returning after years spent emotionally hidden beneath responsibility and sacrifice. The relationship between identity and sacrifice becomes especially complicated for mothers of twins, who often experience intense societal expectations surrounding selflessness and emotional devotion. Many women feel pressured to completely abandon their individuality in order to embody the ideal image of motherhood presented by culture and media. Personal ambitions, physical well-being, emotional needs, and independent dreams are frequently treated as secondary concerns compared to the endless demands of parenting. Over time, this expectation can create profound emotional exhaustion because suppressing individuality requires constant internal sacrifice. Many mothers struggle silently with resentment and guilt simultaneously, loving their children deeply while mourning the disappearance of the person they once were before motherhood consumed every aspect of life. The emotional conflict becomes even more painful because society rarely creates safe spaces for these feelings to be expressed honestly. Instead, mothers are often praised for losing themselves entirely in caregiving, as though self-erasure is proof of love. This cultural narrative can damage emotional well-being by encouraging women to disconnect from their own humanity. Rediscovering identity after years of self-sacrifice often becomes one of the most difficult emotional journeys many mothers will ever experience in their lives. Fathers of twins also experience identity struggles that frequently remain invisible because society often expects men to appear emotionally stable and resilient, regardless of internal pressure. Many fathers feel overwhelming responsibility to provide financially, emotionally, and physically while simultaneously hiding their vulnerability to protect their families. This emotional suppression can create profound isolation because they may feel unable to openly express fear, exhaustion, or emotional confusion. Their identity becomes strongly connected to performance and responsibility rather than emotional authenticity. Many men quietly lose connection with hobbies, friendships, personal ambitions, and emotional openness while focusing entirely on survival and caregiving. Because their struggles are less openly discussed, fathers often endure identity crises in silence, believing they must remain strong at all times. This emotional isolation can gradually affect mental health, relationships, and self-worth. Yet many fathers eventually discover emotional depth they never previously accessed within themselves. The experience of caring for twins can soften emotional barriers, deepen empathy, and transform traditional ideas about masculinity. Although the journey is emotionally demanding, it also creates opportunities for profound personal evolution, forcing many men to confront emotional truths they may have avoided throughout much of their lives before becoming parents. The impact of twins on personal identity is not something that can be measured by photographs, milestones, or parenting advice. It happens quietly, deep inside the emotional world of the people raising them. It is the slow transformation of priorities, dreams, fears, relationships, and the very way a person understands themselves. There are moments of exhaustion so intense that it feels like individuality has disappeared forever. But there are also moments of love so profound that they redefine what it means to be human. The journey changes people permanently, not because they stop being themselves, but because they become emotionally expanded through sacrifice, resilience, and unconditional love. In the end, raising twins is not only about helping children grow into the world, it is also about surviving the emotional process of becoming someone entirely new along the way.